Hey everyone, thank you for joining us for Late Nights with Lenin. And I am sorry, Danny Knapp said, even though I got a tongue lashing from Isha for not reading a bill that hasn't been published, I'm still here and ready to learn. I apologize for the tongue lashing. That is actually a tick I have. I can't stand when Westerners just decide that, like, comment without I don't know. Westerners, I often feel like, are too candid with commenting. There's not enough stigma with regards to commenting about things that um they don't things that they don't know about. So it kind of drives me a little bit nuts. So that it was nothing personal. It's just a tick. Um we have super chat, so you can do it. Also, everyone, please share this so we can get more people on Late Nights with Lenin. We need more than 9 people. So I hope everyone is happy. And the reason why we do this is because everyone, you hear all these extremely stupid ideas like, oh, start locally. What other stupid ideas do we hear? What's not okay? Dissident Rage says, I don't know, it's Vosh's fault, but I'm blaming Vosh. Okay, sure, blame Vosh for whatever we want to blame him for. But you hear so many stupid ideas like, you should start locally, Bernie bro, or get elected. Have you gotten anything done? As if the system is not completely rigged against you in every possible way. And when you're on the left, you have to understand how to analyze the system. And Lenin is a good teacher on how to analyze the system. He taught me how to use statistics. He even taught me how to use statistics to analyze the situation when your data is incomplete. Because Lenin worked with Lenin was kind of stuck in Munich in his 1-bedroom apartment where he literally couldn't do anything besides write mean pieces trolling Kautsky. And so you learned so much. Oh, thank you so much, John. That was very sweet. We really appreciate that. So that's why we started Late Nights with Lenin. And unfortunately, we've had this chicken and egg problem where people who don't watch it don't understand why they need to watch it if they want to be on the left. Like today, I support the idea of a Medicare for All rally, but it's not going to happen by electing like 434 AOCs. It just won't happen that way. Even Bernie says that when you ask Bernie about how he's going to get Medicare for All done, he'll be like, when millions of people get together, we're going to have a revolution. So he basically says that we need to have a revolution to even get the most basics of basic social democracy ready. So that is the kind of issue, is, are we misleading the proletariat by making them think that anything can be achieved via electoralism? And I guess you have to figure out how to hack the system, but luckily you don't have to figure out how to hack the system. The National Endowment for Democracy has already shown you how to hack the system, and you just need to figure out how to apply their hack to our system. And I don't know how they do it. There is a book called How to Coup, but Gene Sharp wrote it, but I don't know the official name of the How to Coup book. But not that it matters. But yeah, read that book. It's and it should probably tell you how to hack the system. And it kind of reminds me of this like Star Trek Voyager episode, The Think Tank, where 7 of 9 says, when you don't know the answer, cheat, because she's kind of scans some puzzle. And that's kind of basically, that's the second Star Trek where they do that. Like Kirk does that with the Kobayashi Maru. He also has to cheat that to win. So anyways, with that, let me see. Don't get fooled by the Green New Deal, because that's just Green New structural adjustment, and they're just pushing imperialism. I've tweeted out a thread. I'm thinking about figuring out what the best way to convert it into an article is. Okay, so then tomorrow I'm interviewing Angelo Giuliano. He is a Swiss citizen who does a lot of extensive reporting on. Oh, it's Kobayashi Maru. Okay, thank you, Rob Granis. Rob Granis is my podcast producer. He is the absolute best. So yeah, what were we saying? Oh yeah, tomorrow Angelo Giuliano, and he's going to talk to us about Myanmar. So nothing is as it seems, apparently. Not that you guys were confused about that. Nothing was as it seems, because apparently I don't know how to pronounce her name. Ansa Sui Kui or Chui. I can't. Aung San Suu Kyi or Chi or San San Sui Kui. I don't know how to pronounce it, but she is basically like a Juan Guaido in that she is completely captured by Western interests, is what I can gather. And there's a lot of like messed up stuff going on there, and there are all these pro-democracy protesters who are neither pro-democracy nor peaceful, like the usual stuff. Aung San Suu Kyi. Got it. Okay. Yeah. And yeah, it's very Aung San. Okay, Aung. Wait, is it with the N? Okay, Aung Sung Si Kyi. Okay. I'll figure out how to pronounce her name. Luc Besson made a movie about her. Who's Luc Besson? And it seems okay. Should I watch the movie? Have you guys seen it? And let's see what else. Okay. Oh yeah, Biden. What was I thinking? Oh yeah, they sanctioned Cuba some more, and Biden was like, Cuba has like mass detentions without trial, and I'm like, that's you, mate. That's entirely you and Guantanamo Bay. Like that's the only place in Cuba where they're having mass detentions without trial. So Biden is upping the Cold War with Cuba. Let's see. Oh yeah. Then they've also introduced a Green New Structural Adjustment Bill where they're going to concern control about carbon emissions to stop Chinese batteries from being imported. And finally, is there any other thing that I've forgotten that's important? Oh yeah. AMLO said he's going to reopen diplomatic negotiations with the DPRK. So that's pretty bold. So he must be very sure that he's not going to get cooed. And I'm for that. Oh yeah, AMLO also called for the release of Julian Assange, and I don't know if they're helping. And Mexico, I don't know if they're helping Cuba. But I also think that Cuba's in a better position than Mexico, to be honest. And if you ever want to do a capitalism versus communism thing, just look at all the statistics for Cuba versus Mexico, and you'll see that Cuba's in a much, much better position. Oh yeah, in Zambia, it looks like there's a socialist who is running for the presidency. Oh, and finally, Pedro Castillo, they agreed to, they finally certified his results, and he is now transitioning into the presidency. So those are, I think, the major things that happen in the world. If I'm forgetting something, let me know, and I'll talk about it in the end. Today, we have Ashlyn Briere, who was a Bernie organizer for South Carolina. And we talk about why the Democratic Party kind of sucks, what Lenin thought about the Deep South. Lenin perfectly analyzes the racism in the Deep South. So it's going to be very exciting. And I'll be back at the end to answer questions if you have any. As for the sending ships, I don't know yet. Let me figure that out. We have Ashlyn, who was working for Bernie in South Carolina.
Next thing will be dinosaurs, I promise.
Because I can't remember all of My Little Ponies.
Yeah, no, it's too much. It's too much. And
she tells me all these stories and I can't keep a track. And then she gets upset that I didn't listen to her. And I'm like, no. It's that My Little Pony is a little too complicated for me to keep.
Well, and their voices are a little annoying, honestly.
So the thing I liked, well, what you did with Mal Hyman was a miracle. Like we had like $40,000 and you just almost got him to win, very close. So what was your tactic that's different than like he's very left. I mean, he's to the left of Bernie. And so how did you do it? Like, what is it that you did a lot more? Like, did you do a lot more outreach, less on advertising? Like, what did you do?
Yeah, I mean, we definitely didn't do as much advertising until the very end. It was mostly social media, and Mal, he traveled all over the county, and like my county, specifically his county, the whole entire District 7, which is, I think it's like 10 counties. It's a pretty big district, and he spent a lot of time going and making connections and meeting people, like where they are, which I think is something that Democrats in the South don't necessarily do.
Or want to do.
Even, when it's election time, they kind of will swing by churches, but they don't necessarily go see people, like where they're at.
I mean,
it's just
when I canvassed for both Mal and Bernie, I was walking up to 12 miles a day. Yes. So, and I saw was a lot of it was just horrific in that, no offense, but some parts of South Carolina was like shanty towns, like third world countries. And I was like, it's many people have it very bad there.
Yes. And I think if I remember correctly, like when you were here for Bernie, you were in Horry County, but you were also in Georgetown County.
Yes.
And there's you might have even been, did Jesse send you to Williamsburg County at all? Okay. Yes, Williamsburg County is the poorest county in the state, and it's represented by Jim Clyburn in the House of Representatives.
And his perfectly gerrymandered, so South Carolina has like 7 districts. So all the Republicans win by like 55%. So they've done it so that and then Jim Clyburn wins by 70% because they pushed all the leftish people in compact.
Well, they take like a part of Charleston and put it in Clyburn's district. They take a part of Florence and put it in Clyburn's district. And then he has like Williamsburg, which in my opinion would make more sense to be in District 7, but it's in District 6.
Tom Rice's district.
And then there is like Columbia is even split into District 6 and District 2. So he has, primarily Democratic voters. And that seems to be where they will split racially, like within those little cities and towns that are split between different districts, like they just go to Clyburn. That's how they drew the lines. And it's problematic because we could actually be semi-competitive in this state if not for that.
Absolutely. Because Tom Rice, no one likes him. He doesn't win by more. Like, do you remember the time when he was weirdly at a Starbucks and then like I called the Starbucks employee and she was like, yeah, he's here. And she was like really uncomfortable that he was there.
He said he had some like cringy caption on his Instagram. And then I think you had said something about like the workers would probably appreciate a raise, like working for a living wage, but he doesn't support it. Obviously he doesn't support it.
So that's why I called to ask them about their comment. And it was really funny because he was it was just awful. Like, I don't know what he was doing there, how he got, but to me,
he was like bopping around trying to pretend like he supports workers. That was like, that was his, 1 or 2 week campaigning that he used to do. But I don't know if you noticed, he has like 10 primary challengers now.
Are they far right?
He voted to impeach Trump. All the Republicans here hate him. And there is actually worse people running against him.
Is it possible to be worse than him?
Yeah, because one of them is like our very own Marjorie Taylor Greene. And he has like 1 million followers on Facebook. He has a podcast, and he has like, I don't know, like 800,000 followers on Instagram. He's young. And he doesn't live in the district, but South Carolina, the rules are you just have to live in the state. You can run in any district. And the folks here don't care. They don't care that he doesn't live here. They just want a Trump supporter representing them. And so since Tom Rice, to them, he's no longer a Trump supporter. So they want him out.
He never was. He was just always opportunistic.
Yes. Yeah, he'll go with whoever will, align with him or get him more money for his.
Yeah, he's about as soulless corporate person as they can get.
Right. Well, that tax bill that they wrote and passed, he benefited. Like, he was like the top 5 to get most money back. He got like a 200 and some thousand refund after that bill came into effect.
Yeah. So what I guess the first thing, I don't know where to begin even. So I wasn't there for what's his name? The one who lost, Jamie Harrison's campaign. Mm-hmm. Do you have any cringe moments you want to talk about or criticize?
Not really, just because I feel like the second half of that campaign got, like for everyone, got screwed because of COVID. They hired quite a few Bernie people from South Carolina to work on the coordinated campaign. There were some of my colleagues who went on to work for the coordinated campaign. And now I never thought Jamie was going to win just because of how the state is. And I feel like the kind of outreach you have to do in a state like South Carolina, we did not get to do that due to the pandemic. That's why, like with the Bernie Sanders primary campaign, even though we lost here to Joe Biden, my turf, like the area I was over was 10 different counties, and we increased votes for Bernie so much from 2016 because I made them focus on knocking on doors. And Horry County specifically knocked on 40,000 doors. It was the most doors in the entire state. So that is what I think Jamie's campaign was lacking. And if you want to get closer than, Democrats typically do, I feel like you're going to have to focus on in-person outreach more than just fundraisers or like, fun little events.
Fundraisers is like a cycle where they they are basically not there to win, but to make work, like a 9-to-5 job. And to them, they win regardless of whether they win or lose, if that makes sense. Right.
And I question like where they spend that money, because hiring more organizers or basically doing things other than like traditional media is something that I feel like they don't really put a focus on, which could make a difference.
Oh, it will make a difference, but not to. It'll make a difference in winning is what I'm going to say.
Yes.
But probably not to because I learned about this other thing. So these people, they also get double commission if they have like sell you TV ads to buy. Mm-hmm. I forgot how it works. But so they're always going to incentivize all the consultants is going to incentivize all the candidates to do TV ads that no one watches.
Right.
Like I could go on for years. It's not just hours, literally years on what to do, because I mean, everything, like it's just that there is no, at one point in time, there used to be unions, and unions kind of did, what I get is that the unions kind of did all the work. Mm-hmm. And it seems like now that the Democrats can't get the unions to do the work for them, they can't do it themselves. I don't know. What do you think?
I think that they are not interested really in doing that sort of work. I just think that they don't want to keep up with the times and they don't want to keep up with the young people and the way things are changing. So I think that's why they're failing.
Yep. So if you want to know what is to be done, well, we're going to read. So Lenin actually did what he said in What is to be Done. And so what people on the middle don't realize is that these are new problems that have never been solved. So the idea of uniting South Korea, there's a big racial disparity. There's a big, every disparity you can think of is just up in the north. It's like blown up 100 times. So it's a problem, and this problem has never been solved because the Dixiecrats were not the same thing as anyone marginally to the left now. So it's a new problem that you have to kind of solve, and no one has the answer to it. So it needs to be first investigated in a proper way, in my opinion.
Right.
What do you think?
Yeah, I think so. And I think we've noticed that they haven't put a focus on investigating it and seeing what works, because we see them do the same thing every single time.
And why is that? Like, why don't they want to even put an appearance of trying to win?
You know, I think it's honestly because the same people have had the power and they've been pulling the strings for decades now. So, you know, I feel like if you're like endorsed to, if your campaign is one that they consider worthwhile, you're not going to be able to do things differently. You're going to have to go by the playbook that is set, and that playbook doesn't work here. So we need to rewrite it. Yep.
Okay. So this one's actually what you're going to like. We can do as many or as few sections as you want. But this one is, so Tsarist Russia kind of had a very similar problem in that it was there was 100 million backwards, and basically like what is the South Carolina, like, you know, I hate this, I don't want to say that word, but Janet, please censor this word what people in the North consider white trash. They're like, that's okay. So basically, Lenin figured out that actually the peasants are not that backwards. It's just that like they don't have the same information because they're far away. And he figured out a way to do a newspaper and teach them how to read on top of it. No, seriously. So, and then they ended up like overthrowing the Tsar. Like they could not have done it without the peasantry or the rural people, the serfs. And so what Americans think is that the rules that as they exist now, without even evaluation, thinking anything will work. And it's like, no, this is like Einstein, a new problem. So we need to do a new thing. I don't know what, because if I knew, I would have solved it. But that's another thing that they don't understand is like, yeah, this is a hard thing, not easy, because we would have done it already if it was
exactly easy.
Yeah. So what we're gonna do is read the results of the election, because Lenin analyzes a lot of the problems with the way the elections themselves are run that you might find familiar.
Okay.
So what he's doing is the Duma is a lot like our system. It is like a congressional election. And what they do is literally like based on their class, they get more votes. Ours is not so obvious. We use Citizens United, but it's still, it's not like you're going to be like lords get 10 votes and humans get, like peasants get 1 vote. But it's effectively Citizens United does that more or less, right?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Okay. So we'll just start with section 1. And Vicky is like a corporate Democrat newspaper.
Okay.
So yeah.
Okay. So you just want me to start at the beginning?
Sure. Or we can start at section 1. It's up to you.
Manipulating the elections.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. The most striking characteristic of the elections to the Fourth Duma is their systematic rigging by the government. It is not our aim here to sum up the results of manipulating the elections. This has been commented on quite sufficiently by the entire liberal and democratic press, and the cadets' detailed interpellation in the Fourth Duma speaks of the same thing. We shall probably be able to devote a special article to this question when the vast and increasing documentary evidence has been collated. For the time being, we shall only note the principal results of manipulating the elections and the chief political significance of this manipulation. The priesthood mobilized against the liberal and Octoberist landlords. Repressive measures increased tenfold, and the law most unceremoniously violated to prejudice the rights of the bourgeois democracy in town and country. Attempts made to wrest the worker, curia, from the social democrats. By the same means, these are the principal methods used in manipulating the 1912 elections. The purpose of this policy, which is I can't even say this word. So
Reminiscent,
which is reminiscent of Bonapartist policy. How do you say that?
Yeah, Bonapartist, like Napoleon.
Bonapartist policy was to form a right-wing and nationalist majority in the Duma. And this aim, as we know, has not been achieved. But we shall see below. Go ahead.
Also the purpose of any Republican election.
Yeah.
Manipulation is to form a right-wing and nationalist majority. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So
and it's been successful.
Racists and a bunch of corporate psychos.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Go on.
Let's see here.
But we shall see.
But we shall see below that the government has succeeded in upholding the former Third Duma situation in our parliament, if we may call it that. There remain two possible majorities in the Fourth Duma, a right-wing and Octoberist and an Octoberist cadet one.
So a right-wing Octoberist would be something like Joe Manchin, Mitch McConnell coalition. And the Octoberist cadet would be something like a Joe Manchin, Chuck Schumer.
Oh, okay.
So not much different, but yeah, a slight difference at the edges. But
Okay. The Electoral Law of June 3rd, 1907 built the state system of administration, and indeed not only of administration, on a block of the feudal landlords and the top strata of the bourgeoisie, with the first named social element retaining a tremendous preponderance in this block, while above both elements stood a virtually uncurtailed old authority. There is no need now to say what the specific nature of that authority, brought into being by the age-long history of serfdom, has been and still is. At all events, the shift in 1905, the collapse of the old state of affairs, and the open and powerful actions of the masses and classes necessitated the search for an alliance with particular social forces.
Mm-hmm. So the musique here is in the next sentence is going to be like in the US sense, it'll be like the rural working class white person.
Okay.
So the right wing was boosting their hopes on the fact that the rural uneducated, as in literally they can't read, person would be voting for them, but they did not. Okay. And Lenin figured out why.
Okay. The hopes pinned on the uneducated musique in 1905 to 1906, the Bulligan and Witt electoral laws were shattered. The July 3rd system banked on the strong, on the landlords, and the bourgeois bigwigs. But in the course of a mere 5 years, the experience of the Third Duma has begun to break this gamble as well. It would be hard to imagine greater servility than the Octoberists showed in 1907 to 1912, and yet even they did not prove servile enough. The old authority, the bureaucracy, which is closely akin to them in character, was unable to get along even with them. The bourgeois policy, I hate saying that word, in the countryside, the law of November 9th, and full assistance to capitalism were both directed by the very same Herishkoviches.
Yeah, he would be like the Mercers of America. So they are like, they owned lots and lots and lots of land and lots and lots and lots. Okay, so maybe like Tom Cotton, lots and slaves too. So
I was gonna say lots of land, like Bill Gates.
Yeah, but on top of it, they also had lots and lots of slaves. So I don't know.
Okay, and the results proved to be deplorable. Purishkevicism, refurbished, repaired, and freshened up with a new agrarian policy and a new system of representative institutions, continued to crush everything and hamper progress.
That's exactly like what happened here in the South around that time, like right after. So Russia and America abolished serfdom slavery formally on the same exact year. And then in both the South, like they figured out ways to actually
get around it.
Yeah, actually, Lenin's written quite a few. Let's do that. Okay. After we finish this section, you'll read about like what Lenin thinks about the former slave owning South, and I'd be interested.
That'll be interesting.
Yeah, with the numbers, just we'll put up a chart.
Okay. So last paragraph here. The June 3rd system developed a crack. Manipulation of the elections became inevitable, just as Bonapartist methods are historically inevitable when there is no solid, durable, and tested integral social basis. And when there is a need to maneuver, but in a different way to pronounce that, I think.
Different. Yeah, he always has like random French words in his notes.
So it's like maneuver among heterogeneous elements. If the democratic classes are powerless or have been greatly weakened for temporary reasons, such methods may be attended by success over a number of years. But even the classical examples of Bismarck in the 60s of the last century or of Napoleon III bear witness that things do not work out without the most drastic changes. In Prussia, it was a revolution from above, and several exception ally successful wars.
Yep. So basically, he's saying that when income, like when the there will be a time when the bourgeoisie or the capitalists become too distant from normal people. And so they can't win they can never win. Like they'll never have enough popular support once like the society gets too diverse to actually win in a fair election. So in order to keep them fair, like winning, they'll like abandon democracy like that, which they've proven in every single. Is there a state where they haven't proven that?
No, I don't think so.
In South Carolina, it seems exceptionally egregious, right?
Yes. The Democrats got crushed in the state legislature too in 2020. So the Republicans have even more of a majority. And so they've been introducing all kinds of absolutely insane bills.
Okay. And with voter rights, like, it's like the Democrats will never fight when they're in power, but then the Republicans are so calculating. And they'll dismantle every voting right. And it's like, and then they get to. So
I know that they have a voting rights bill that'll, decimate voting rights in the legislature. I don't know if it got out of committee or not. Right now, it seems like they've been focusing on guns and abortion. So they wanted to put forth a bill to make open carry without a permit a thing, but apparently it was too extreme for a couple Republicans. So it is now going to be open carry with a permit. And then they want to ban abortion at 6 weeks. So that's what they've been working on.
Yeah, the gun thing, open carry, it's like, eventually the chicken will come home to roost. So they'll want to be careful on that. But the abortion thing, it is, it never, like, what? I guess it definitely disenfranchises the poor, the elder, like everyone who is marginalized, because they'll probably have to drive out of state or do whatever. So it is like, I guess, the same thing as everything else, right? Just to like kind of push down.
There's only like 2 abortion providers in the state. So, I mean, it's already difficult, for poor people and other marginalized people to get them. But if it becomes illegal and you have to just drive to an entirely different state, I don't know where they'll go. Maybe North Carolina, maybe Virginia. I have no clue.
Okay. So go ahead and, like I said, don't worry about the exact numbers. If he has any charts and extreme numbers here, we can just we'll put
just start at number 3, the former slave owning South.
Yep, that's what you wanted to see, right? His
yes,
assessment of that.
Oh yeah. Okay, the United States of America, writes Mr. Himmer, is a country which has never known feudalism and is free from its economic survivals. This is the very opposite of the truth, for the economic survivals of slavery are not in any way distinguishable from those of feudalism. And in the former slave-owning South of the USA, these survivals are still very powerful.
And
it would not be worthwhile
100 years later.
Yeah, we are still seeing the ramifications of that.
Yes.
It would not be worthwhile to dwell on Mr. Himmer's mistake if it were merely one in a hastily written article, but all liberal and all Narodnik writings in Russia show that the very same mistake is being made regularly and with unusual stubbornness with regard to the Russian labor service system, our own survival of feudalism.
Yeah. So Narodniks are these like really okay. So they're kind of like really fake liberals who would like pretend to wear peasant garb and like, I don't know, like they'd have peasant face or something. Like if that's something, and then like they'd go to the rural areas to try to get their vote, and that didn't work because it was really creepy.
With
and
like
fake.
white feminists who have money
exactly.
and go thrifting just because they want to.
Yeah, that's exactly it. Yeah. Oh my God.
Yeah, that's a big pet peeve of mine. So I thought it might
At the end, relate. I will talk to you about the other feminist tweet from yesterday. So, okay.
Yes. The South of the USA was slave owning until slavery was swept away by the Civil War of 1861 to 1865. To this day, the Black folks, who make up no more than from 0.7 to 2.2% of the population in the North and the West, constitute from 22.6 to 33.7% of the population in the South. For the USA as a whole, the Black folks constitute 10.7% of the population. There is no need to elaborate on the degraded social status of Black people. The American bourgeoisie is in no way better than in this respect than the bourgeoisie of any other country. Having freed Black people, it took good care under free Republican democratic capitalism to restore everything possible and do everything possible and impossible for the most shameless and despicable oppression of Black people. A minor statistical fact will illustrate their cultural level. While the proportion of illiterates in the 1900s among the white population of the USA of 10 years of age and over was 6.2%. Among Black people, it was as high as 44.5%, more than 7 times as high. In the North and the West, illiteracy amounted from 4 to 6%, while in the South, it was from 22.9 to 23.9%. One can easily imagine the complex of legal and social relationships that corresponds to this disgraceful fact from the sphere of popular literacy. What then is the economic basis that has produced and continues to support this fine superstructure?
Okay, so this is kind of cool because so all the things like racism, sexism, that's not actually involved in making money for people. Mm-hmm. That's often like tools of the oppressor to keep people down and profitable for them. So that's what he's talking about as a superstructure. So he like just illustrated all this like awful racism and abuse. And so he's like, what is this economic, who's profiting in order to create this kind of disgusting superstructure of like racism and abuse is what he's trying to analyze.
Okay. It is typically purely Russian labor service system, which is known as sharecropping.
He's joking because it's not Russian, it's American.
In 1910, Black people owned 920,883 farms, which would have been 14.5% of the total. Of the total number of farmers, 37% were tenants, 62.1% were owners, and the remaining 0.9% of the farms were run by managers. But among the whites, 39.2% were tenant farmers, and among Black people, 75.3%.
Yeah, so 75.3% were renting, like they didn't own their farm. Land. Yeah, okay. I mean, that's a lot like slavery in that it's exactly like serfdom in Russia.
So they were paying someone else.
Yeah.
Like basically giving them profits from their crops.
Exactly. Huh. So it's no different.
Yeah. Let's see. The typical white farmer in America is an owner, and the typical Black farmer is a tenant. Mm-hmm. The proportion of tenants in the West was only 14%. This section is being settled with new lands unoccupied and is an El Dorado, a short-lived and unreliable El Dorado, to be sure, for the small independent farmer. In the North, the proportion of tenant farmers was 26.5%, and in the South, 49.6%. Half of the Southern farmers were tenants. But that is not all. These are not even tenants in the European, civilized, modern, capitalist sense of the word. They are chiefly semi-feudal, or, which is the same thing in economic terms, semi-slave sharecroppers. In the free West, sharecroppers were in the minority, 25,000 out of a total of 53,000 tenants. In the Old North, which was settled long ago, 483,000 out of 766,000 tenant farmers, or 63%, were sharecroppers. In the South, 1,021,000 out of 1,537,000 tenant farmers, or 66%, were sharecroppers.
Yep.
In 1910, free Republican Democratic America had 1.5 million sharecroppers, of whom more than 1 million were Black.
Okay, hold on. But Black people only made up 10% of the population back then, and they were like, what is 1 million divided by, what is 10 divided by 15?
They were 66. They were 2/3 of the.
2/3 of the sharecroppers when they made up only 10% of the population. That's crazy.
Mm-hmm.
Wow. Okay.
Okay. And the proportion of sharecroppers to the total number of farmers is not decreasing, but is on the contrary, steadily and rather rapidly increasing.
So each person who owns the land is getting bigger and bigger holdings, kind of like what's happening now.
Mm-hmm. In 1880, 17.5% of the farmers in the USA were sharecroppers. In 1890, 18.4%. In 1900, 22.2%. And then in 1910, 24%. So it just keeps going up. Steady, slow and steady. American statisticians draw the following conclusions from the 1910 returns. In the South, the conditions have at all times been somewhat different from those in the North, and many of the tenant farms are parts of plantations of considerable size, which date from before the Civil War. In the South, the system of operation by tenants, chiefly Black tenants, has succeeded the system of operation by slave labor. The development of the tenant system is most conspicuous in the South, where the large plantations formerly operated by slave labor have in many cases been broken up into small parcels or tracts and leased to tenants. These plantations are in many cases still operated substantially as agricultural units, the tenants being subjected to a degree of supervision more or less similar to that which hired farm laborers are subjected to in the North. To show what the South is like, it is essential to add that its population is fleeing to other capitalist areas and to the towns, just as the peasantry in Russia is fleeing from the most backward central agricultural gubernias.
They're like districts.
Okay, so
they're kind of like counties, actually, in South Carolina. Like there would be counties in South Carolina.
Okay. Yeah, it's so weird over here. Everything's like a city or a county, and then up in Pennsylvania, it's like we have townships.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's start reading that again. Where the survivals of serfdom have been most greatly preserved in order to escape the rule of the notorious Markovs, to those areas of Russia which have a higher level of capitalist development, to the metropolitan cities, the industrial gubernias, and the South. The sharecropping area, both in America and in Russia, is the most stagnant area, where the masses are subjected to the greatest degradation and oppression. Immigrants to America, who have such an outstanding role to play in the country's economy and all its social life, shun the South. In 1910, the foreign-born formed 14.5% of the total population of America, but in the South, the figure was only 1 to 4% for the several divisions, whereas in the other divisions, the proportion of incomers ranged from not less than 13.9% to 27.7%. For the emancipated Black people, The American South is a kind of prison where they are hemmed in, isolated, and deprived of fresh air.
The only thing I would change in modern times is sometimes it's not kind of, it's just literally a prison.
Yeah. Yeah. The South is distinguished by the immobility of its population and by the greatest attachment to the land, with the exception of that division of the South, which still has considerable homesteading.
Texas.
91 to 92% of the population in the two other divisions of the South resided in the same division where they were born, whereas for the United States as a whole, the figure was 72.6%. So the mobility of the population is much greater. In the West, which is a solid homestead area, only 35 to 41% of the population lived in the division of their birth. Black Americans are in full flight from the two southern divisions where there is no homesteading. In the 10 years between the last two censuses, these two divisions provided other parts of the country with almost 600,000 Black people. The Black people flee mainly to the towns in the South. 77 to 80% of all Black people live in rural communities. In other areas, only 8 to 32%. Thus, it turns out that there is a startling similarity in the economic status of Black people in America and the peasants in the heart of agricultural Russia, who were formerly landowners, serfs.
Yep, who were also slaves, basically. So, has things gotten worse or better or about the same since 1915, you think?
I mean, maybe there was a little bit like upward momentum and things getting better, but I don't think it's much.
Yeah.
Can't be much. I mean,
to me, it seems like it's changed a little bit of form, as in like you need fewer people to farm nowadays because we have better technology, but the lack of mobility, the stagnate, like for example, South Carolina in Myrtle Beach, I forget which Jesse Andrews, they didn't have public transportation and people were so poor, many didn't have cars. So I'm like, what on earth? How do they move? And
there's no public transportation anywhere that I have been, except maybe, in Columbia and in Charleston.
Okay.
Like all the counties that I was over did not have. There's no buses. There's nothing. I mean, we have taxis in Myrtle Beach because of the airport and because, of the tourism.
Yeah.
But there's no buses. There's like no Amtrak. There's nothing. So it is a problem, especially when you get into like the more rural counties, like in Dillon, they or like if your car breaks down, you're pretty much stuck because there's like nothing even really in walking distance that you can work to. Like some parts in Horry County, you might be able to like walk to your work, but that's not everybody and that's not everywhere.
I remember Christopher came on our show earlier and Christopher and I got hungry for like during our canvassing and we wanted to get lunch. So, and then like we tried to look for it. I looked it on my GPS and the next available sandwich shop was 7 miles away.
Where were you at? Do you remember?
And no, it was not Andrews. It was some sort of it was like south. It started with the G maybe. Yes, it was Gillard. I was right.
Gillard.
It's right next to Plantersville.
Yep. Okay. Yeah, Plantersville. That was one of his targets.
Yeah. And so I remember it was like each house was like 13 miles away from each other. Like, so there were these like many small houses that were as far away from each other as possible.
Yeah.
And then like without a car, you're totally screwed. Because it took us we had to go back to Plantersville to get a sandwich shop or something like ridiculous like that. And I'm like, how are these people even navigating? Like, oh, what happens if a car breaks down? And we were just like very confused. And it was funny because it seems like it was like done on purpose because the area where the rich people live, I forgot what it's called. It's some sort of plantation. Still, I'm not kidding. Right, Ashlyn?
Yeah, they all, so they call all the like housing developments like plantations. So it's like Surfside Plantation or like, I don't even know, but they're all called plantations. And they're not actually plantations. That's just what they call these housing developments.
Yeah, it's creepy.
It makes no sense to me.
Yeah, and well, it makes a lot of sense if people want to fantasize about living in. Yeah. It's just like tailor-made and branded for very racist people, in my opinion.
Yeah, so basically just take like upper middle class white people who they love their HOAs. And that's what it is. Like a homeowners
and they're all like
association.
obsessive about each other, and they're all spying on each other's lawns.
Yeah, if your grass isn't cut perfectly, you're going to have a knock on your door.
Yep, from like an old lady who's like, you need help with your, and the old ladies in South Carolina are not like direct. So it's like, you have to do like hours of mind reading to figure out what's wrong. That's the worst.
South Carolina is an interesting
like
place.
That's the worst thing is the lack of directness, where they're like really, hey, hi, sweetie, blah blah, and you're like, okay, what is it? Just like say it.
Well, especially if you if you weren't. So I obviously, if you can't tell, I don't have a Southern accent. Anyone who might watch this, I'm from Pittsburgh. I've lived here for 5 years, but I kind of know the South by now, and if you don't know, you could be like, is this old lady being mean to me, or is she being nice to me? I can't tell, because that's just how it is.
Mean to you. You can tell.
Yeah.
It depends. They'll never they'll say, oh, that's a cute haircut or something like that. And then oh my God, you look really bad. And they're trying to be, they're trying to tell you, but not. It's always like that TikTok. Tell me that you have mud on your face without really telling me that you have mud on your face. Like that's like all they do. Like, they won't say that. See, there's a big like spot of mud on your nose. They'll be like, interesting look.
If you ever hear any of them say, "Oh, bless your heart," they're calling you a dumbass.
Yeah,
they are not really blessing your heart.
No, they're not. That is like when you they say that to extra clueless people from New York, and you've probably said something so stupid that it's painful for them right now. You know what's really funny? Cornel West, he grew up in the South. So when I spoke at Harvard, like when I was at the Harvard thing with him, the funniest thing, I'm still like, I cannot imagine this, but he figured out a way to insult somebody by saying, he was talking about Michael Eric Dyson, and he said, I love him as a human being. And everyone laughed because everyone knew it was an insult, because he loves everyone like a brother, not as a human being. And I'm like, wow, I was impressed. And I'm like, okay. And then so when I went to South Carolina, I was observing everybody's behavior in order to be like him, so that I could insult in that beautiful of a way. But I didn't learn. Just have to spend more time with the old ladies in South Carolina, and they'll teach you how to be.
Yeah, just come talk to Jesse. He'll hook you up with all of his old lady friends. I
know. Okay. It was funny. I felt bad because he had a really sweet old lady friend who he was trying to convert to voting for Bernie instead of who was she? Warren.
Oh,
so adorable.
She was the chair, or she might still be the chair of the Georgetown County Democratic Party. I found her
to be really nice, and so I'm like, okay. She was just like a little misinformed, but not. Like she was really driving Jesse nuts though.
I always told those two that they should have a reality show. Like they were like the odd couple. Like that's what it was. But she's sweet. And
she's great.
Jesse is persistent. So I would listen into their conversations, and it was just hysterical. I can't tell you how many times I've had to tell him to like get off the phone and stop arguing with someone who's not going to vote for Bernie, and like keep it moving, because he would spend like 20 minutes talking to someone who was not going to vote for Bernie. Not at all.
I know. It was really funny. When I canvassed with him, for some odd reason, like I got invited to this like beer pong party. And it was clear, like, so all the teenagers were definitely voting for Bernie, but some of the older people were kind of not. But it was fine. Like I just kind of did some beer pong with them, with the teenagers. Oh, not the teen. Okay, they weren't teenagers. They were a little older than teenagers, but it was fine. Like I played a little, but Jesse was making sure everyone had their voter registrations instead of doing beer pong. But Jesse is really good at what he does.
Yeah, he gets invited into homes very often.
I got invited. I actually got invited in like a few times, and also I got invited in to be stoned, and Jesse would not like that. So I would not get stoned in front of Jesse.
You should bring him on and talk to him sometime. He has like so many funny stories, and some of them he did not tell me until after the campaign because I was technically like his boss.
Yeah.
For a time, but he got shot at.
Yes, he did.
Did not tell me.
Yeah, he did get shot at. I did not. I'm sorry. Yeah.
And he also got attacked by a dog, and I had to make his ass go to the ER.
The ER, I wasn't there. The dog, I was there.
Yeah, I'm like, dude, you're gonna get rabies. You need to go get your rabies shot, like right now.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness.
It was fun, and I think like literally that is the only way. Like you kind of have to care about people and want to build relationships. Like it's not about voting as much as building relationships, in my opinion.
Right, because they're not going to vote for you unless they have a relationship with you.
Yeah,
and it's, you know, politicians or even like Democratic Party officials just like telling people what to do doesn't work.
No, because it's irritating because you're like, you haven't done shit. Like you can't tell me what to do.
It's condescending and like paternalistic, and it's just very it's cringy.
Yes, exactly. And it's like lots of Dunning-Kruger effect. Like the people in cities who who call themselves liberals just assume that all these people are stupid and they're not. They're smarter than you, but they just know something you don't about their area.
Right. And, you know, a lot of them work multiple jobs and just are tired as shit, and they don't have time for this. And especially if you're not telling them how any of the stuff is going to affect their, you know, their day-to-day life. If you don't give them a reason, you know, people don't want to hear about all these like big concepts that Democrats like love to talk about. Not that they can't understand it, but just that it doesn't resonate to what they need, you know, in the moment. Well, it's the same thing if you don't have someone from that community, you're not going to get invited into the community.
Correct. And that's what a lot of Democrats, they just hire whoever's kid is like a good consultant. Like they'll just pay crap loads of money to hire random consultants who just fleece them from the money, but they don't have the relationship. And then there's no point.
Right. Or they hire these, you know, like campaign kids who just like bounce around and have no ties to any area. And it's not ideal. Like you could maybe have some people from out of state come in if you need to like fill up your, you know, your staff, whatever. But if you don't have like mostly, I would say like at least half of your staff from the state that you're in, like that's just not going to be good.
Yeah, like it seems like, okay, so liberals, I hate this out of like the most, and they always fail with me because they always assume that people they disagree with are stupid, as opposed to, what if I'm the out of touch, you know, the Simpsons meme? And then, so it's like, no, you just don't understand everything that they have to go through. So you think they're being illogical, but you just need to study them more and learn more. Like, yeah, I agree. I mean, I got plenty invited, even though I wasn't like, I got invited to a preacher's house, even though I'm not a Christian, like in South Carolina. But that's because I was not slimy and I was not lying to them.
Right. And if you're nice and you actually listen and want to hear what they have to say, it makes a little bit of a difference.
Yeah, there are a lot of lonely old people. Like it was funny because this one guy was so impressed that I found his house. He was like, like it was in the middle of nowhere, literally in the middle of nowhere. Like I had to like cross like some sort of like woods behind something. Like it was kind of hard, but I found it. He was like, oh my God, you found my house. You're the first canvasser in 30 years. And so he came and voted for Bernie with me just for finding his house.
That is so common, especially in those really rural counties. Like you won't have driveways off of the streets. Like you'll have a house here and then it's just all grass and yard. And then you'll have another house behind it. So you have to like cut through someone's yard and then you find the house. And like most times all these people are family, like cousins, brothers, you know, whatever. They have like this plot of land and they all live on it. But without seeing like house numbers, you feel weird, like creeping through someone's yard to find another house.
But it's cool. Yeah. You just kind of have to find it. And it was funny because it shows you like how little, sometimes it's not even about politics. Sometimes it's about caring enough to find their house. Yeah. There was this one older lady and she was from the Philippines. She had like this,
absolutely wild life story. But this is like the one and only time I did this, because she was, I could tell she was lonely. And I went in, I had a canvasser with me. So I went in and talked to her for like 20 minutes, and she was so sweet. And like, that is, you can't obviously do that all the time, but you can do it when it counts. And I don't know if she ever voted for Bernie, but she just kind of like needed that human connection. So when they're, it's South Carolina's like so many it's a retiree state. Like there's tons of old people here, especially in Horry County. They come here to retire. You get like moderates from up north who already like benefited from slightly better policies, and then they retire to South Carolina where the taxes are so low and everything is
and
shitty.
Then they want austerity because they're going to die in 10. Okay, the lady I lived with, Susan, this would piss her off so much. Like even now, if we're to call her, she's going to get pissed off exactly about this. Like I understood what they were doing, but because she saw them as like her peers and stuff like that, she'd get so mad.
Yeah. But that is what they're doing. They move here and then they start voting Republican because they want lower taxes.
And the really funny thing is that she wanted me to argue with them. I'm like, I'm not arguing with your neighbors about anything. But we did go out to they have this okay. So in her subdivision, I don't know what you call it, in her little gated compound, they had a little clubhouse with a restaurant, where we would sometimes go for lunch. And I was just like, I'm not arguing with your neighbors during lunchtime. It's just weird. Not but she really
let's eat.
I didn't argue with them. I was nice to them. And I just said, I understand. It was funny that she was really insisting that I argue. I'm not going to do that. Sorry.
Probably because she wishes that she could argue with them more.
Okay. I know. But I'm a stranger and they all have guns and I'm not arguing.
That's probably why she wanted you to. You would leave and never see them again.
Yeah. But it feels weird though. So, anyways, what are you planning on doing next? I know you have by the way, I remember. Okay. Ashlyn is the feminist person. So she knows a lot about feminism. I don't know anything. So Janet, can you show her Ashlyn the tweet from yesterday and tell her, Ashlyn, I want you to tell me what you think from a feminist point of view. So basically this Twitter account is called On This Day She. They locked their account for obvious reasons, but I want you to get your feminine and tell us why this is not feminism or what is whatever, because there's a lot of confusion.
Gotcha. Okay.
So you want me to read it?
Yes, please.
Violet Morris was a world-class athlete in many sports. A lesbian, she had a mastectomy in order to fit into a racing car more easily. She lost her license and her chance at the 1928 Olympics because of her loose morals. She was killed in 1944 by the French resistance.
So who is she?
She is, okay. Well, she is known as the hyena of the Gestapo.
Hyena of the Gestapo. Okay.
So...
Yeah, she was a Nazi collaborator. She was actually in a car with a French family, but they were helping the Nazis.
Yeah, and that's why the French resistance shot her.
Interesting. So this Twitter account talked about her because it was that day in history, and what was their reasoning for doing it? Because
she was allegedly discriminated for being a lesbian.
Okay, so my response to that is that they have a very narrow and shallow understanding of feminism, because that would mean that today you and I have to support someone like Ann Coulter, who has, obviously at some point in her life faced discrimination for being a woman, whether she wants to admit to it or not. But that's not what we're doing. We're not propping up and centering these women who are either domestic terrorists, Nazis, neo-Nazis. We're just not doing it. So I think that she does not need to even be remembered. There's other people that they could talk about.
Millions. There are, I mean, I can off the top of my head name you thousands of resistance fighters, female snipers, like all these amazing people who were fighting the Nazis. Like there was a 17-year-old girl who was basically ended up like killing a whole bunch of Nazis. And right when she's Yugoslav, I can't remember her name, but Lena, I can't remember her last name, but I'll show you the picture later. But it's like, why don't you honor her? And what's going on here? This is so cringe. So yeah, this Twitter account really bothered me because this is not the only problematic. When they unlock it, you'll see this is not the first time, and this won't be the last time they've been problematic this way.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think that they can hide behind feminism as a way to defend themselves from this tweet. We don't need to be platforming dead Nazi collaborators. No.
So you have a program called Slay the Patriarchy. So tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, so it's just a Facebook page at this point. Like I retired it mainly. It was an Instagram account that basically grew pretty fast in like 1 to 2 years. And then I noticed as I drifted from just, topics that, weren't just for like cis white women, but for like all women. And that was popular. Like that was what people wanted to hear. And then whenever I started talking about things other than that, 2018, 2019 and onward, specifically, like more anti-imperialist stuff, especially when I would mention Palestine and what's going on in Palestine, like my following would go down. So that is what I've noticed. And I think it's just because like the online feminist community is largely liberal, and especially on Instagram. So it's an interesting place to try and navigate while you want to talk about multiple things, and then you say something they don't want to hear, but it's the truth that you have to speak. So now it's just it exists on Facebook, and Facebook honestly seems to be a much better place for it to exist.
Okay, that's good to know. Is there anything else? Other places? Oh, your main account. I believe. Do you want to talk about your main account? Is A Briere, right? It's
Ashlyn X Briere, and that's on Twitter and Instagram.
Yep. I follow her on everything, and she is really cool. You've also worked with the environmental group that had to do with the drilling in South Carolina.
Oh, not really. So like loosely, there's a group in South Carolina called SODA, Stop Offshore Drilling in the Atlantic. Yep. And I know some people who are in that.
It was Susan. I'm so sorry. It was not you, Susan, who was really into it.
Yeah, there's quite a few people who really do that. But interestingly enough, most Republicans here also oppose offshore drilling because our economy is tourism. It's beaches, and
they're retirees and they don't want oil in their beach.
Yes, no one wants to see that. But no, I mainly do community organizing through my nonprofit, and it's just mainly, it's like donor funded. We're finally starting to look into see if there's any grants that would be good for us, which there's not many for community organizing. Nope. So that is what I'm doing.
Like Obama, where you're like doing some weird real estate deal. It's really shady.
What? He's what?
When he did community organizing, it was like some really shady real estate thing that was involving gentrifying. I'll send you the article.
Oh, gotcha. Yeah, no, we're not doing anything with
that's when you get the grants.
No, so it's hard because basically like all I want to do is do like a fellowship to train like young women, like college students and maybe like right out of college students to do community organizing. We have a college here in Myrtle Beach that is Coastal Carolina University.
Oh, yeah.
And about like half the students come from out of state. So we would get lots of, transplants, and we could get them in this fellowship program, and then they could go back to wherever they want to go or where they came from, whatever state that is, and take what they've learned and apply it there. So that's what I'm trying to work on right now.
Well, Lenin would love that because what he did was kind of like that, but even more backwards in that he had to teach people how to read. And he started these Marxist study circle where they would teach factory workers how to read, and then they expanded it to all over Russia. So that was their community organizing was like very basic because they had child labor, and so no one knew how to read. So I would say that Lenin would approve of that.
Well, good. I
recently got. Whenever we have more political education, it's always good.
Yeah. Yes, absolutely. And I think, speaking of like child labor, you know how South Carolina, the labor here is awful. We have no unions, or very few, and they're not recognized. I was elected to the South Carolina Democratic Party Progressive and Labor Caucus, which was like not hostile, but a little takeover by young people. And so I'm trying to focus more so on the labor portion and try to get that education rolling. It's just hard because they can be fired for everything and anything, and even talking to you, you know.
I know. Actually, let's after we hang up this one, let's figure out a day to meet, because they can't touch me, so I can send anything. Like we actually, from the CPUSA, we have lots of good like labor packets that.
Oh, that's awesome.
Okay, so let's do that for
offline.
Next week.
Okay.
Yeah.
Perfect. Yeah. So that is all the shit that I got going on.
Okay. Well, that's a lot, and yeah. Like the 3 kids, oh my, and now are they all out of school?
Well, so yeah, Lucy I homeschooled Lucy this past year because of COVID.
Did it work well?
It was kindergarten. So she's in summer camp now though. So she's gone all day almost. Nice. She's gone like 8 to either like starts at 8 or 9. And then I pick her up sometime around 4 or 5.
Great.
And so that helps, but she'll be in first grade this fall and she's going to public school. So that'll give me a break because I also have like these book projects that I'm trying to get started. And all I have are outlines right now because I've had no time to work on chapters. So.
Oh, wow.
Yes.
Yep.
That is keeping me very busy.
I can imagine. Well, thank you so much for joining us.
Yes, it was good talking to you.
Now?
Oh, I have to go put the kiddos to sleep.
Okay, so, well, wish them good night. And Lenin would have suggested that kids drink warm, like he has actually a letter where he talks about how warm milk helps kids sleep, and with honey. I don't know if the honey helps or not. Oh, I think that honey would not help.
They can't have honey until they're a year for whatever reason. I don't know why. Know that. Botulism or something. I don't know what that word means, but I think
some virus that like does bad things for you.
Yeah, so that's why. But I have almond milk.
Oh, I love almond milk. In India, we drink a lot of that. It's really good for kids.
Yeah, that's what Lucy loves. She's never been a fan of dairy, so go give her some almond milk and put her butt in bed.
Okay, well, good night.
Bye. Thank you.
Hey, everyone. I hope you're having a good stream. So let me see. Do we have any good questions? It seems like a lot of people were talking about homeowners associations and food poisoning and food deserts. So do we have any questions or comments or more? Oh, yeah, I have one quick rant. Okay. So today, some troll was insistent that North Korea or the DPRK was a monarchy. And then like they were like, that's because one family has been ruling it for blah, blah, blah. And then I said, no, actually, the head of state is Cho Rong-hae and not Kim Jong-un, even though the Western press somehow like stalks Kim Jong-un. I don't know why. And then I showed them the Constitution where it proves that the head of state is Cho Rong-hae and that Kim Jong-un is not even in the Supreme People's Assembly. He's the head of the Workers' Party. And then suddenly they were just like, oh, but then Are you really saying Kim Jong-un doesn't secretly control everything in this state of like, I don't know, 20 million people, 30? How many millions live there? So eventually what you get is that they have these feelings from the State Department, and actually and they just don't want any evidence of anything that contradicts them, and they're like evidence proof. So no matter what you tell them about the DPRK, so it's kind of funny because I did promise somebody that I was going to quickly explain what Anna Louise Strong explained about the DPRK. And I verified everything she said via there's a thread from a long time ago where I explained this. But basically, on August 6th, 1945, the Korean people voted to have a constitutional assembly. And then the US came, and then the US dissolved that constitutional assembly in their half of Korea. And then basically, afterwards, they did have a constitutional assembly that was representative of the people in the north half, and they many Koreans actually tried to leave for the north. There was a massacre because all these, like, at first they didn't have U.S. soldiers; they had local Korean soldiers. In like sometime in 1948, and then those Korean soldiers tried to defect to the north, and because of that, like, the U.S. basically had to come in. And so if you check the Korean War, what you'll see is that the U.S. is fighting Koreans because they had needed Americans to fight the Koreans because the Koreans would not fight each other, to be honest, like unless they were really right wing or crazy or just a collaborator. So ultimately, what you realize is that the actual country that was built with the consent of the Korean people was the DPRK. And then if you look at their elections actually, they didn't even have a communist party at all. Like, they still don't, actually. So they have about 5 parties that's in their parliament, which is called the Supreme People's Assembly. And I think they have a one parliament system, like not 2 parliament. Like, there isn't like a Senate and a House. There's a one parliament, and then there is a committee, called the Presidium, that does the function of the executive government. And yeah, that's basically it. And actually, it's kind of funny. There's a lot of co-ops, and if anarchists were less dumb and less brainwashed by U.S. propaganda, they'd love the DPRK. But whatever. Oh yeah, the elections are a little different because what happens is that basically, when you have a worker state, they actually go to different local organizations. Like sometimes there's like a homeowners, so not a homeowners, but like a condo, like a neighborhood condo association. Like they can nominate candidates. Employment guilds or trade unions can nominate candidates. And then they all like get together based on their local area, and then they kind of have a caucus where they decide who they want to represent them. And so often it might look like the official election has only one candidate, but that's because the wheeling and the dealing and the backroom stuff is done before the election in a system that's like way more democratic than ours, to be honest. So that's about it, I guess, with the DPRK. I hope I answered that question that I promised to answer. We will be back on Wednesday for the part.
Ashlyn, can you hear me?
Section 2 of the history of the Soviet Union, B, Bolshevik. And we'll have some more the cool thing is that as time goes on, there's more video, so we can do like a lot more visual aids. And please subscribe, share with your friends, tell them why you want them to subscribe also. And something else I forgot. Be sure to subscribe, share with friends, troll other people's chat, and ask them to come to Sundays with Lenin. Not Sundays, late nights with Lenin. And also let us know what you think. How to make it funnier, how to make it more relevant, how to get new people interested. How would I get your friends interested? All those things we're interested in learning, so put it in the comments below. And with that, I will say Auf Wiedersehen. I don't know why I said to do Auf Wiedersehen, but that's what I'm going to do. Until I get something different from Auf Wiedersehen. It just seems like a nice goodbye greeting